What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Apartment 113 podcast, where we talk with cool folks in the cannabis and psychedelics industry to learn about their projects and celebrate their successes. My name is Rob Sanchez, and this is episode 77. We're joined today by Cam Leids, host of the TripSitting Podcast and founder of Conscious Retreats. TripSitting is a blog and podcast that explores what it means to be human. The human experience is an incredible journey with so many layers, and there is no right way to be human. TripSitting explores how Cam and his guests find their way through this crazy thing we call life. He talks about topics ranging from psychedelics, spirituality, health, relationships, and business to just about anything and everything else, with the only agenda being to spark open and honest discussion filled with authenticity and vulnerability while having a little fun along the way. Conscious Retreats helps people to find the best retreat center based on their experience, budget, location, time, and other variables. Find your first or your next ayahuasca, psilocybin, or iboga retreat today. Listen and subscribe to the TripSitting Podcast and visit consciousretreats.net for more info. Enjoy the show. Cam, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate that. Also, too, it's a little synchronistic that if you said this is probably going to be around episode 78, I'm about to release episode 77 of my podcast tomorrow.
Oh, nice, dude. Yeah, we'll see if we can get this to line up just right. You got to bring me on for episode 113. So
100%. Honestly,
I got a little
done.
while to prepare.
Done.
That'll give me some time to maybe have some of these wild experiences, my friend. I have psychedelics past recreationally, dabbling in like LSD, Molly, MDMA, like ketamine, and kind of the hippie scene, the bass music scene. But often I was that guy kind of riding out a trip, like a heavy experience, in back in the car, or sitting around the fire, just kind of watching the embers burn, trying to work through stuff. I had a hard time really recreating with psychedelics, which kind of turned me towards Zen and Stoicism and kind of other ways to still the mind. Since then, seeing the industry start to become an industry, maybe, and less of an underground ordeal, I feel like some hesitation around supporting it, as my relationship was kind of a mixed bag. Yeah. How did you arrive at psychedelia, or kind of what did you experience before you ended up in this corner, this multifaceted corner?
So I'm similar to you, and I started purely recreationally, and it was mushrooms was the first thing that I ever tried. And my relationship with drugs, going back even to the beginning, like I very much grew up believing the propaganda, like all drugs are bad. Was not open to it. Nobody in my family ever talked about it. I didn't know anybody that really smoked weed even.
The dare effect.
Yeah. So alcohol was chill though. Alcohol is totally cool. That's not a drug. That's something else.
Right.
And so, I drank like a little bit in high school, and then I got to college. I went to Ohio State, which is a big party school, and drank a lot. I joined a fraternity, and so I had tried cannabis, at certain points in my life. At that point, like a couple times, did not like it. Just gave me anxiety. My head was spinning. I was usually also drunk too, so I was just cross as fuck.
Yeah.
Never had a good relationship with it, and I was like, all right, whatever. And one of my friends in college introduced me. This is probably my sophomore year. To cocaine. And that was the first quote unquote hard drug.
Broke the ice.
That really broke the ice. And I wasn't immediately like, oh fuck, I need more of that right now. But it was just one of those experiences where like I had the experience with it, and I'm like, well, I'm still here. I'm still alive. I didn't change. I don't think the drug itself is that bad.
Kind of started questioning the standards a little bit, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And just also too seeing my friends at that time who were some of them on like a pre-med track, some of them in like bioengineering and like all of these really smart things.
These are not the burnouts that society would tend to associate.
Exactly. Like I see them interacting with all of these other drugs that in my mind were all bad drugs, but I really just knew nothing about them. And I never was at a point in my life where I was questioning about them just because I didn't need to. And so the experience with cocaine started to get me to open up a little bit more. And then I tried mushrooms for the first time, probably close to
a heroic dose of mushrooms for the first time, or
no, like
a responsible dose.
Same. To be honest, I don't really know. My same friend that introduced me to cocaine, got a bag of mushrooms, and me, him, and one of our friends. He was like, "Hey, you want to split these and just have fun and see what happens for a day?" Yeah. And we did, and I had no idea what a dose of mushrooms actually was.
No expectations at all, huh?
No expectations. Wow. I was just like, yeah, I trust you to just make this work. And we did them, and I remember they tasted awful. I think we put them on like a bagel and peanut butter and then mushrooms on it. And it was a good experience. Again, nothing super eye-opening by any means. And
a good high, ride all the way through.
Yeah. If I had to guess, we probably did somewhere around like 1.5 to 2 grams each. So
that is where
definitely a decent dose.
I wish most folks would start like that.
I also agree. The 1/8 is not the standard to fucking start at.
Thank you, man. Because as a freshman, I had a little over an 1/8. We each had that much and split the 4th one. And then we just drank some orange juice to hang out, and I could barely summon words to explain it for the rest of the night. I was out.
and there were still times where I was like, I had no idea what was happening. I remember my like at one point we put on the show Big Mouth, if you've ever watched that.
Yeah. And that'd be wild.
I had never seen it before. I had no idea what it was. And he threw that on, and I just remember like we watched an episode, and I was so unbelievably confused the whole time. Like I had no idea what was happening. And I kept on kind of looking at them thinking like, there's no way they know what's going on either. Like this is just absolutely
trying to get the
nonsense.
social cues.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I just couldn't. And then afterwards, we flipped the lights on and then just started kind of like hanging out, listening to music. And we were just giddy. We were just laughing a lot. And so like I said, good experience.
That's
6 months later, I tried LSD for the first time. And that was the experience that I was like, whoa.
Puddled a little bit, huh?
Yeah, it was just like, it was so intense, but like in the best way, and so much going on. And also too, I actually low-key kind of got dosed. Like I didn't know that I was going to be doing LSD that day.
Nice. Wandered into it.
Yeah, it just kind of happened. And just ended up going to a house party that night. And like that was it. And just like, yeah, one of my friends, well, I already done the LSD and then I went to the house party. But I had my friend with me that I'm like, hey, just did LSD, by the way. So you're just kind of just, make sure I don't die tonight. And he was like, all right, cool. I got you. So he was my unofficial trip sitter.
Yeah.
That went to the party with me. And yeah, I just remember like being there and like feeling so open and feeling, now that I look back at it, I felt so much energy. I would not have used those terms back then because I thought that was way too fucking hippie, but
yeah, but it was that vibe, huh? That kind of connection or awareness that it opened.
That, and then it's truly indescribable. And I remember later that night I was like looking down at these jeans that I was wearing. They're these acid wash jeans. I just remember I was sitting looking down at them, and they're just changing and making all of these different geometrical shapes, like within the patterns of the lines that are going down. And I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I could roll with that. These are good pants. I think it was really the L that kind of floored me as well, man, and had me thinking like heavily, because it's a very long time to be altered. It's not a quick up and down kind of thing. You got some time to sit with it for real. Time for life to intervene, your phone to ring, or something to happen that's unexpected.
Yeah.
It's Oh, it can be a ride for sure, man. I remember the first time I had it was in Colorado, and there in Denver, we were sitting in a park for 4th of July, and I looked over at my buddy, and suddenly he was just thousands of miles away, and we were like very alone. But then we were back really close together. It just started cracking up laughing, and the two of us, like grown men, just rolling in the grass, laughing our asses off. It was a great time. It was a really happy, positive time. And I made the bad decision of trying to explore LSD on my own, though, without that social barometer. And I maybe learned that it's not all fun and games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I only explored LSD on my own maybe like 2 times like in my life, honestly. And one of them was very, very intentional, where I was like, I'm going to sit with this and just take a day to myself and like see what this is like.
Oh,
But
nice.
that was after I had probably already tripped on LSD 20 plus times.
You're familiar with the phone call.
Yeah, exactly. So like I'd been through it, and I mean, still to this day, I will say I haven't actually interacted with a full dose of LSD in a very long time at this point, but nothing's worse than hour 10 of an LSD trip.
Just kind of ready.
You're just ready for it to
sleep.
Be so done.
Yeah.
You're like, those lines that are moving, those lights that are bright. Yeah, it's not so cool, anymore.
Yeah. That's where I really found some solace in meditation and trying to just settle, man. Trying to zone out a little bit. And it's interesting how psychedelics can maybe show you a glimpse at what these folks are really meditating for decades of their lives without substances. Mm-hmm. Not that it's necessarily a cheat code, but it's an idea, like that you could definitely grasp onto and try to find sober.
Yeah. I remember, so I used LSD a lot in college, and it was just this, like, I did no research on it, but it was this inherent knowing that every time I would use it, I would start to just notice these little things about myself, like these tiny little patterns that were ingrained in my mind. I used to be pretty like reactive to things. I used to have anger issues. Like I used to very much, things needed to go my way, and I was pretty mad if they didn't. And so through all of that recreational LSD use, I would start to kind of chip away at some of these patterns, though, and realize that I have the power to actually choose how I react to things. I don't need to just be this broken record that's repeating the same things over and over again. I didn't understand the extent of how much psychedelics could really help with that, but I did know that there was something there, and I knew that they were really powerful beyond like my own knowing and imagination. And so I really enjoyed having that relationship with those substances. And I got COVID once in 2020 in like September or October or something, and I completely lost my taste and smell. Oh. And it just didn't come back. Like I had long COVID, and so brutal, it had been 3 months of no taste, no smell whatsoever. And I'm a huge foodie. Like I love food so much. So like to me that was fucking
hit you where it hurts, man.
Yeah, it was devastating. And I was starting to get really depressed. And I remember I was alone in my apartment, just trying to think like, what can I do that I think would help this right now? And that was the first time where I was like, I'm gonna take 5 grams of mushrooms by myself, and I think that's gonna help. I had done no research into it whatsoever. I didn't realize that was like kind of a thing, taking 5 grams by yourself, alone in the dark. But that was what I did, and it helped, man. My taste and smell, it didn't like fully come back, but that was the first time since I had lost it that something was there, that I could actually smell a little bit of something, and things started to be different. And then I knew from that point forward, it was going to be a slow process, but it was going to come back. But like, I fully believe that that's what kickstarted it, is that 5 trip. And then it also helped me deal with the depression that was associated with it too. Which was the more important thing, to be honest, than actually getting it back. It was dealing with the depression that was associated with it.
Just trying to right the ship and stay on the path yourself. Yeah, it's I wonder if that neuroplasticity and kind of that the neurons like being able to rebuild or anything could actually connect you with whatever lingering senses you had enough to kind of kickstart that. That's a really intriguing theory.
I very much think it did. And I have seen some studies that have actually talked about psychedelics for treating long COVID. Wow. So I'm very much of the belief that it did help. But around that time, probably a couple months before that, was the first time that I had heard of ayahuasca. And so this is 2020. I had just been recreationally using psychedelics. I'm graduated college. I'm working in tech sales. And I heard about ayahuasca, and it piqued my interest. And that's it. That's all it did. It was just like, that sounds fucking crazy. But that's interesting. And, every couple months I'd probably hear something. It would come up in something I'm watching, a podcast, a conversation. And again, it would just continually just kind of pique my interest until it just got to this point where I was like, I need to do this. Like, I know this is something I need to do.
Felt like the next step.
Yeah. Like I knew that it was calling me. And I also too, I wasn't feeling fulfilled in my life. And I was looking to figure out, like, what am I missing?
I see. Were you selling interesting tech, or were you kind of in the corporate world?
No,
grinding?
I was working for startups.
Gotcha. Shout out to the startups I'm working for. It's a grind, but I'm still on it.
I was getting tired of worrying about quota and all that shit.
Yeah, stressful for sure.
Yeah, but I was making good money. So like by all means and definitions, like I was doing everything that society expected of me. And
right. And they would expect you to be positive and fulfilled by that.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't. So I ended up getting a new job for a different startup doing the exact same shit at the beginning of 2022. Okay. And I told my boss at that time, like my new boss, I said, hey, sometime this next year in 2022, I'm going to be taking 2 weeks off to go to Peru. Like, and like, that was me really like setting that intention. Like, this is going to happen. And part of him hiring me, he knows that's going to happen. So when I tell him, hey, I'm taking 2 weeks off, that's not going to be a fucking surprise.
Was there any sense of like, you need to tell someone else to almost kind of keep yourself committed in some way?
It held me accountable because I said, I'm going to do this. And I started telling my friends, I'm going to do this. And I think that was a way of subconsciously, I'm making sure that I hold myself accountable. Because it was still scary. Like, I don't want to go into it and make it seem like it wasn't something that I was still not low-key terrified of, because I was. I knew nobody that had ever done ayahuasca. I was going to a different country by myself. I had never traveled internationally alone before.
Oh, and what a first trip. Literally a first trip.
Uh-huh. And so, I did a bunch of research on Reddit. And some other websites to find
some of the best research is done right there.
100 shout out Reddit.
Yeah.
To find the retreat center, and I ended up going to this retreat center, Dreamglade. And I'd also too, I'd started therapy that year too, just because I knew that there were changes I needed to make. So like I was trying to work on myself. I had tried meditating in the past, never quite understood it, and so that wasn't something I regularly practiced. But once I had that ayahuasca experience, I did 3 ceremonies over the course of a week.
So you took the 2 weeks or only 1 week?
1 week to do that, and then the other week was to just travel around. Peru.
Cool. Yeah.
But the ayahuasca retreat, I mean, that it showed me everything that I thought was true about myself was just not.
Wow.
Like it truly, like, it shattered me like to my fucking core. In the best way, but also in a very challenging way. That
seems to be the consensus in some ways. It's a awful experience almost that can be unbelievably bittersweet and and fulfilling and enlightening after pushing through it. Did you have that trepidation all the way up to your first cup? Or when you got there, was there some kind of relief, like you're here now, like let the process kind of begin?
I'd say I had all of that trepidation right up until the very end of the second ceremony.
Oh, so it took two actually to really get through perhaps some of the bitter before the sweet.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The first ceremony, to be honest, was actually like really nice. It was very pleasant, and I was just laughing the whole time, and I was joyful, and like it basically just kind of showed me like, you're doing great, man. Like, you know, you've worked through a lot of your things, and almost gave me like this false sense of you know, like security of you know, kind of patting my ego on the back a little bit, being like, good job getting this far, man. Yeah. And then not, you know, me not realizing at the time, like, oh, but I'm going to fuck you up next time. Like, you're about to get absolutely rocked. So enjoy this.
It had to build you up before it could knock you down.
Like literally that was it. And, you know, I look back with a huge smile on my face because ayahuasca, I think, has that playfulness to it almost, of like the mother ayahuasca, like that spirit, that medicine, that energy, like she knows what she's doing, and she's never going to give you more than you're ready for, is the thing. And so I think I needed that experience of being kind of all happy and giddy and
to prepare a little
feeling
bit for
good. Yeah. So I would let my guard down for the next ceremony.
Yes.
Which is what I had to do. Yeah,
man. So ceremony 2 got a little introspective. A lot introspective.
It got very introspective. There was just all of this, essentially like this pain that was just building up in my stomach, like the whole ceremony. And it was really uncomfortable. And all I wanted to do was like purge it out. And so I tried everything I possibly could to like purge this out of me. It was just very, very uncomfortable, painful almost. And like, I didn't know what it was. I wasn't seeing any visuals. Like, I didn't feel like I was tripping. I barely even felt like I was high in any way, shape, or form. I just felt like I had the worst stomach ache of my life.
Just intense nausea, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. And so after about 4 hours of that, one of the facilitators, maybe even longer, finally came up to me and was like, hey, like what's going on here? He's been trying to help me through pretty much the whole time, but like at the same time also letting me struggle. I realize now.
So there's something to that on the facilitation side, to let folks be in their world.
Yeah. So finally towards the end, he's like, what's going on? I'm like, dude, this is just so uncomfortable. I want it to stop. He's like, well, why don't you just get comfortable with the discomfort and stop fighting it and just get to know it? Like, question it and feel it. And I didn't realize that I wasn't doing that, is the thing. Like, you only notice these things once they're very obviously
they've been pointed out to you.
Yeah, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, you're right. That's exactly what I've been doing. And then I went back to the mat and, you know, kind of just sat with it without judging it. Like, I was judging it the whole time as this bad thing that needed to come out of me, instead of just allowing it to be. And then so once I allowed it to be and questioned it, it was basically just all of this like shame and guilt that had built up over my entire life. And like, it was almost like this, like all these pictures of my past were flashing before me of every single time that I have ever felt shame or guilt in my life.
Wow.
And it showed me that I was making a conscious choice to hold on to all of that and to let that define me, where all I had to do was just let it go. And so I could make that choice to let that energy go, let all of that shame and guilt go, and that it's not going to change who I am as a person. Like, I'm still going to be me.
Right. Wow. So there was a line of reassurance throughout it that just needed to be acknowledged, huh?
Yeah, that was it. It just needed to be acknowledged that it was there. And that's all it ever needed. But I had been running away from it for my entire life, pretending like it wasn't there. And because of that, it was essentially actually like making me make certain decisions based on not wanting to feel that shame and guilt.
Right. So it's kind of subconsciously making some decisions that were based on who you thought you were, perhaps, or what was important, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow, man. And I think that is an experience that I am at the same time incredibly afraid of approaching within my own mind, but also immensely curious and interested in attempting, in riding the wave, I suppose, or in testing I guess testing is the wrong word. I don't know, like testing your psyche, there's analyzing your willpower, huh?
I don't like the idea that like there are certain words that we should and shouldn't be using when it comes to this. My philosophy is like, if you're coming at this with respect and reverence for what you're doing and the medicine, like the words don't fucking matter at all. Like one bit. So
this
like
linguistic relativity, language is an afterthought for us all.
Yeah,
anyways.
exactly. Like this like ayahuasca is not language. Like that is felt sensation. Like when she's talking to you, it's not through words.
Yeah, man, dude, it sounds like one heck of an experience on your side. And then did you have some days down between those three experiences?
Yeah, so it was like
together?
It was like one like ceremony, and then the next day was a rest day. The next day, ceremony night, then another rest day, then ceremony.
On your rest days, are you feeling nauseous still, or is it more in your head now? The rest days are actually a breath, almost an exhalation.
Oh yeah, those are incredible, because you just existing and being there, and like, once you come down from the medicine and kind of put together and piece together some of these realizations, it feels really good. And so you just get to kind of sit and bask in the energy, which is so important as part of the healing process. That's what integration is. It's being able to actually sit with the lessons that you've learned and figure out, what does this feel like? How do I cultivate this feeling more in my life? What have I been doing to run away from this feeling and to sort of make myself not be able to actually feel like this? And so having that time is really good. They'll usually do like some yoga. We did some breath work. There was a library of all these really, really great books at the center that I was at. So, I was reading. There was like a little lake we could jump in. So it was just nice to just exist. And also there was no Wi-Fi, no cell service whatsoever where I was at,
man.
In the jungle. So like you didn't have the distraction at all, which was honestly a very new feeling to me. I don't think I had ever gone a week of my life without a phone since I had gotten a phone.
Yeah. So, but it didn't feel trying. It actually felt refreshing.
Oh man, that was probably one of my favorite parts of the entire retreat. Is because
almost regretting having to turn it on again as you get your airplane.
Dude, I was dreading it. I was like, I would love to keep this thing off the whole time. Fucking Queen Elizabeth died while I was on that retreat, and I like didn't even like I found out afterwards. I was like, that's interesting. I don't care.
World events mean a lot less when you're not getting it at this rapid pace at your fingertips.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The scale or the scope, I guess the scale of the world is so much more than we're all assuming now, with constant connection and just immediate satisfaction of any kind.
It is a blessing, and it is also a curse. But because like we're not meant to take in all of this information at the pace that we're doing. Our brain is not made for that whatsoever. And that being said, it is nice to be able to know these things and to be able to communicate with somebody that's across the world at literally the click of a button.
Right.
But like, all of these things were built, and this is just going to take a huge jab at social media, but like they were built to keep our attention. They were built to keep us there. That's how they make money. That like they were built to give us these little dopamine rushes every single time we click the like button. Exactly. Yeah. And so if you're not aware of that, it's really easy to get sucked into it. But then once you're aware of that, you need to, at least I need to take time to consciously step away from it and keep it over here and just exist without it.
Right. I do notice over time, I start to slip into, like, it's LinkedIn actually that gets me because it's tied in with the professional network.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, this is my job, man. I could rationalize this, but then I'm checking it again and checking it again. So the last maybe 10 days or so, I've had all the socials off my phone. A few times I caught myself typing LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Right in the search. And I didn't even realize I didn't have it anymore. So it's it gets you. But it's easier said than done to try not to use it because it is associated with people's like life now. It kind of got wedged in there so much without any preparation or thought around it.
No, and that's the true danger of it, is that like it just happened and us as consumers had no control over that. There was nothing we could have said as it was happening to stop it from happening. It was just happening. And now we have to pay the consequences and figure out what does this mean for us moving forward. But again, like even with TripSitting, with my podcast, I've built it fully off of Instagram. Like that's where I've met most of my guests now. That's where I've grown. That's where my audience comes from. And so like without that, I have no idea what I would have done to actually get this podcast out into the world. Yeah.
And was it after the Aya trip that you felt the need to start the podcast, or kind of what was the catalyst for you to get the show started?
So I was actually, I thought it was one thing, and then I actually just realized that it was something else. And what sparked that is, so I started TripSitting just as a blog about 4 months before my ayahuasca trip. And that was just because I knew that I was, getting a little bit more into psychedelics. I started actually doing a little bit more research and seeing the science behind it, and that there are all these studies being done. And I was just thinking, I bet that there are people out there that just want more information or want to hear more firsthand experiences of what people are doing. And so I just started writing about some of my personal experiences, some of the things that I've learned. And before I went to Peru, I knew I wanted to start the podcast. But in my mind, I was like, I'm going to wait until after I get back because I feel like that'll be the more optimal time. Whereas I used to think that it wasn't until after the experience that I went back and I was like, oh, I need to start the podcast. But no, I knew that. And the only reason I know that is because I actually just had the founder of that retreat center on my podcast this week. And I went back through my journal that I was writing in when I was there, and I had mentioned the podcast in that journal. So I was like, well, then I must have been thinking about this beforehand.
Wow. Yeah.
and now I remember that I was.
Right.
See, I came back and then, just immediately started it. And I mean, essentially that whole podcast, if you listen to those first episodes, which I highly recommend, nobody do.
I'm working my way backwards, so I'll be there in a little while.
please don't. The production value just goes down and down and down the earlier on you get.
Hey, you got to touch the bottom before you can start seeing the top there.
But I mean, that was essentially just documenting my whole integration period of ayahuasca and
oh, very cool.
Talking about what I'm going through with every single guest that I would have on. So it is cool to be able to kind of have that log of this is how I've changed over the years. Like it's very well documented.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's very interesting, and it's going to be interesting for ancestors and other folks to be able to look back and be like, "Oh, this is Grandpa." Like, wow, what was going on here?
Sounds crazy.
Yeah, or maybe they're going to be like, he was ahead of his time, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Has the podcast been all a joyful experience for you, or has any of the podcast requirements, like the scheduling, the administration, the posting, the things like that, have you been able to take that in stride? I feel like I kind of oscillate from I got this, everything's fine, to being like a little bit stressed on getting the next thing rolling.
I'm the same way as you, for sure. I mean, I always started it with the idea that like I'm doing this for me. I'm not doing this to build an audience, like to monetize this, to like, if that happens, fucking cool. And yes, in my head, I dream of that happening, but that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I want to have cool conversations with cool people. And I want to talk about these things that were just not really talked about when I was growing up. All of these existential, the spiritual, even just having fun with psychedelics, like breaking the rules a little bit. I just wanted to have those conversations with people and use it as a tool for me to connect with those people on like a very genuine and authentic level. And so when I'm really connected with that, like I'm in the zone, everything's easy. But it's also, just what happens is life gets in the way and there's other priorities that I have done. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to do this fucking podcast and take an hour out of my day and then edit the video and then upload it to 8 different places. And like, it gets to be, monotonous because I'm the only one doing it. I'm assuming you're the only one doing yours too.
Yes. My wife, Adelie, is the blessing over here, helping me keep it going at times as well. Yeah. And it's it can definitely be a grind. The first year I had to call some folks like, dude, I need a show tonight. Like, yeah, what time are you free? But I've definitely got the scheduling piece worked out finally, and even pushed out into the fall. Feel like it's never too early to schedule now.
Dude, my scheduling piece, I used to be like really on it. And then it got to a point where I ended up having like a really big backlog of episodes, which I didn't love having. Kind of
a blessing and a curse on that. It's giving you a little bit of freedom, but maybe too much.
Yeah, exactly. Because like I ended up having, I think like 12 episodes in the backlog, and like I only post once a week for the most part. And so by the time I was posting like the 10th, 11th, 12th episode, I was like, man, I feel like I'm a different person than when I recorded this 3 months ago. And I almost felt like it was like fake me putting that out there at that time. And so I tried to do my best now to not have that backlog, but I kind of just made this decision like, I'm just going to let this flow. And I'm going to stop actually trying to put so much energy into scheduling and finding the guests. And I'm going to let them kind of find me and just let the universe put us together. And this whole year has just been that, which has been really nice, of me just kind of meeting somebody very organically and just being like, I feel like we should record a podcast together and like dive deeper into this. And they're just like, sure, let's do it.
We've got an hour to discuss here.
Yeah, exactly. And then we do it, and then it works out really well. And I don't stress too much about having tons of episodes in the future. I keep a backlog of about probably 3 or 4 episodes for those
Still
times.
Wise.
Yeah, for those times where I don't, record any, but then I'll get into it and I'll record like, 2 or 3 in a week. I'll be like, cool, I'm good for the next month.
Right. Man, I thoroughly enjoy the conversations as well. Like this one, I feel like you can have that long form conversation that lets the connection happen a little bit differently than the conference handshake. Mm-hmm. The quick, good to meet you, kind of here's my business card thing is what I was getting often in the industry. And it was hard to be able to talk with folks long term and really know who they were or express anything beyond like, yeah, it was good to see you again, man. That kind of thing.
That actually brings me to something I wanted to ask you. And I don't know if maybe you don't want to necessarily share this on the podcast, so I'll ask this in kind of a cryptic way, but Gotcha. That thing that you shared with me before we started recording about the cannabis industry, I was wondering if you could kind of tell me more about that.
The cannabis industry itself has been through a lot of bumps. The legacy guys and some of the OGs, I probably not as legacy at all as what these dudes really are. But I mean, I was wheeling and dealing up through the Midwest before we had legal things in Colorado, before everything. And I think there was this sense of a rush to the industry and an excitement. And it's like year after year, it's a grind on that excitement. It really is. You have to kind of keep finding that passion and trying to connect to figure out the reasons why you're doing everything. And the industry on the cannabis side has grown so massively that there are just so many brands, so many intellectuals on the topic, thinkers, companies, everything you could ever imagine, that it's starting to feel inauthentic. Mm-hmm. It just is. And I continue to have cannabis guests on, of course. I mean, I'm invested in the space for life. Writing with Fat Nugs magazine and judging cannabis competitions is so much fun, but there's still something about what happens every time society gets their hands on something that is a little sad, maybe is the right word, or it's just a little bit disappointed. Not that I need or want more from the industry, but just that I maybe had a more altruistic end goal than the behemoths and the profit kind of hungry mindsets and things like that are very effective at what they do. So they get a loud voice and a lot of following and interest. That's maybe not genuine either. And that's
taking it's taking the spirit out of it. It's taking the fucking character, like what made it so cool and like kind of gave you that excitement. It's trying to just take, well, here's the thing that makes money, so let's take that thing and fucking supercharge the hell out of it.
Yeah, and for anyone who's a comic book fan, just look at the MCU and how that made you feel if you were actually reading comics. It's like that kind of thing. And I look at the psychedelic space, something that has been very healing for me. Microdosing mushrooms was a life-changing experience, actually. I got over a stuck mindset of just kind of social anxiety and just like low-key depression that has just been lingering since who knows, in childhood. I was able to just kind of shake free of that with an every other day practice nice. For about 2 months in maybe it was 2017. And since then, it felt like I just moved over into the fast lane. And I didn't realize I was in the slow one, Can
I ask you about that experience? Was it ever like really challenging during that 2 months where you were like, I think I need to stop this?
Yeah, I think kind of into the second and third weeks there, because I was also experimenting with tolerance and with cannabis. So I think there was a lot of myself that I had been kind of smoking into the background. And you had to acknowledge it. And it turns out not everything back there was pleasant, I think. Mm-hmm. And kind of like exploring like some of the things, like when you kick cannabis after a long term, sleep is like extremely hard to find. So then with the microdosing and then like lack of sleep, like sometimes I found myself in some weird mind states, but I had good folks around me, I think, that kind of helped balance it out. And I tried to get outside a lot and just like connect with my hobbies again. And that I think I ended up doing well, but I journaled a lot, man. And I think I worried a lot. There's probably some gray hairs in here just from that. Yeah. And it was really, it was a good experience overall. And I think during that time, actually, I was still pretty enmeshed in the psychedelic scene in Minnesota. Started to see more issues with like safety, or with like just, I feel all this gratitude and this love for the folks around, but it seems like they're not getting the same thing out of the substance, maybe. Or there's some hedonism that comes with the fun side of psychedelics that is unavoidable. That was getting uncomfortable. So I made like a lot of changes, actually. I moved across the country like 3 times for work. Mm-hmm. Really just uprooted everything and just like kind of cleared the like tabula rasa, just like, well, I could do whatever I want. So let's get a job in Seattle. And I just like moved from Minnesota across the country. Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy, man. Nowadays I'm microdosing, but it's more on a weekly basis, just like Saturdays to kind of level set. Yeah. Keep moving along. As much as I could love to talk about psychedelia, and as much as I really feel that calling to try Aya, I don't dabble in like hero level doses and things like that, because I'm a little bit fearful, actually, of my own introspection. I think that that's also too why it is important, if you really do want to go deep with psychedelics, having a container that is held by a facilitator, by a shaman, by somebody else who knows what the fuck they're doing, is so actually like very, very important. Like I've definitely been able to go, pretty deep on my like solo heroic journeys, but I don't think I've gone anywhere as deep on those. Like I've taken 7 grams of mushrooms before by myself. I think that if I take 3 grams with an experienced facilitator,
I'd be able to go 5 times as deep. Like it's not even a doubt in my mind.
Yeah. So there's definitely a benefit to that side. And I think that's a vulnerability that I had to experiment with psychedelics enough to be even willing to acknowledge or even willing to mention. Cause I think my kind of standard attitude towards reality is pretty stoic and private. That level of kind of openness is difficult to embrace, but and some of the substances are right there to show you why you should. Yeah.
But also to anybody that might be listening to this and thinking about it, do your research. Don't just get any facilitator off the street just because they might have some sort of certification that looks cool. Have a conversation with them and make sure that they've done their own work. Any potential facilitator or shaman that's real and legit and knows how to interact with these substances, they should have a relationship with them, and they should be very open and honest about where they are at in their journey. You don't need the shaman that's been using this for 10 years, a shaman that's been, theoretically just started and they've only maybe had 1 year of experience. But if they're incredibly open to you about where they're at and what's been going on in their life, that's fine as long as you understand that. But it's what I see now is a lot of people that pay for these classes and get these certifications to be like a trip sitter or psychedelic guide or therapist. And they think that just because they have that certification that it actually makes them qualified to do it. And it doesn't.
It's so much more than that. It's maybe a good first step.
It could be a first step.
Or a 10th one.
And I understand the need for something like that if this is going to be legalized in the United States.
Yeah, man. What's your perspective on the industry, if we could call it that, even in these like early days of psychedelia?
I call it the space.
There you go. I feel like we were saying words don't matter, but industry doesn't feel right all the time.
Industry just doesn't, honestly, industry just doesn't feel right at all. Because it's just so capitalist. Which again, I don't inherently have just like, I think that capitalism's the devil. I think it's done some great things, but I think it could use an update.
Indeed.
But rather than go into all that about psychedelics, it's really exciting and it's also really scary because I, unfortunately, now having followed it for only a little over a year and a half now, which is not even that long, I see it taking the same sort of shape that the cannabis industry did.
Kind of walking in that path accidentally.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just the nature of, you can't fit this thing that's supposed to heal people, regardless of how good your intentions are. If you fit it into the broken system, it's just going to mold to the broken system. The system is not going to get fixed. And so trying to fit this into the already extremely broken system, I already see that happening. And I already see the path that it's going down with all of these certification courses that are popping up and with all of these fucking brands that are selling chocolates, psilocybin chocolates and all that.
Amanita and other things being pushed.
Like Amanita products, which for the most part, the public does not know what the fuck that is, but they're branding it as an alternative to psilocybin, which it is not, by the way.
Right.
And all of these chocolate bars, which I won't name, but do your research, people, because this information is out there, that have 4-ACO-DMT in it instead of psilocybin, which, by the way, there's nothing inherently wrong with 4-ACO-DMT. So the idea behind that is 4-ACO-DMT gets broken down by the body into psilocin, which is what psilocybin also gets broken down to. So theoretically, it is the same, but don't fucking lie to people and tell them that they're getting one thing and then give them something else, even if they probably can't tell the difference between the effects because you're trying to save money because you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, that is probably the tagline for the episode.
Is don't be a piece of shit. Just be honest. And like like I see all this fuckery going on of just people not being honest. And that happens in every single industry, and it's unavoidable. And we'd like to think that psychedelics are going a different way, but it's becoming
it's like
very
this tragedy of the
me.
commons.
Yeah, that
right.
And like I hear like stories now of like these mushroom companies and genetics companies like fucking each other over, like their business partners and shit, and pulling out of deals. And it's like, come on, guys, like these are supposed to make us love each other. Like how did you get so far away?
Yeah, and it makes you wonder too if those business owners don't actually have a connection truly or didn't with the plant or with the substances, medicines, because you'd think that those medicines almost counterbalance some of that tendency to expand and profit and conquer. It's like almost like if you're actually consuming what you're selling, it should be sort of breaking down that foundation and keeping everybody in a nice middle ground, at least ideally.
So again, you would think so, but have you ever like heard of the term, and they talk about this in, I don't know, just random articles and shit, but like psychedelics are non-specific amplifiers, meaning that they will amplify whatever it is that is inside of you, regardless of what that is. So if you're a greedy, profit guzzling piece of shit, it's probably going to help you justify why you are a greedy, profit guzzling person. That's going to turn you into more of that, and basically just keep reinforcing how that's the good thing. Whereas, you know, my healing journey, and it sounds like if you were to ever interact with ayahuasca, is coming from a place of wanting to be humbled and wanting to change, and you know, again, having that respect for it. Right. So, you know, a lot of these healing stories that we hear of, and a lot of the clinical trials that are being done and all of that, there are people that are depressed or anxious or have something that they want to fix within themselves, and they're coming to this medicine to fix that thing within themselves. And then it's working.
Which is just a different mindset entirely.
Which is a very different mindset than people trying to, you know, figure out how can I get richer? Like how can I be more of a narcissist than I already am?
Asking ancient medicine for that.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that the ancient medicine will probably give that to them, because that's how it works.
That is very intriguing. I have to do some reading on that guy. Mm-hmm. And on that note of intent and like betterment of the industry, I thought that the PsyCon showing and many of the speakers at PsyCon were very aware of that potential of that we could slip into or kind of slide into it by mistake. You know, it was great to sit in some of those sessions and really hear from folks and connect with like-minded people at PsyCon. Was that your first time speaking on a panel, or have you done panels in the past?
I've done one panel in the past, and that was at a conference called Wonderland in Miami, which was a very different vibe than PsyCon.
Oh, it was, huh?
I'll just say that I appreciated PsyCon a lot more. Okay. Because of the people that were there that were very open and honest, and like it didn't seem like it was this like giant circle jerk of us being like, oh, the psychedelics are the greatest thing ever, everybody needs to do these. It seemed like people there were pretty level-headed, and for the most part being like, not everybody should do this. Like
there was some humility.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man. And I was looking through the panels and basically planning out my day. Mostly I ended up at cannabis conferences, and I don't get too much time to sit in the sessions because I'm kind of grinding and doing my thing. But on the psychedelia side, I just sat in sessions for day after day. And when I saw your panel, you know, psychedelics for more than just healing, immediate circle on the pamphlet, man, I was signed up immediately, because I think that the conversation does always revolve around healing, which I think is essential for the well-being of the industry. But to take away some of the experiences that I had that were never healing focused, but yet still provided some healing, I think is maybe, trying to whitewash the experience. Like, even if I had a trying acid trip in the forest, at least I was in the forest with some good people, not necessarily laying in a couch, kind of wallowing in my in my emotions, alone. I just feel a little worried about that side of it too. So it's cool to see almost the rec focus, for lack of better words.
And it's interesting. Like I felt really passionate about wanting to talk about that, because I again also see this super big focus on healing, which is funny too, because again, I work for ayahuasca retreat centers, like helping people come there who are looking for like deep healing. And that, like, that's where my journey really started too, was like, that, I mean, again, it started with the LSD recreationally, but like, now that I've done ayahuasca and I've had that really healing experience, I don't look at all of that experience that I had with LSD and mushrooms and MDMA as like, oh, I'm just going to try to forget about those because that doesn't really fit into this narrative. Those were just as important, because that's what got me to even get the courage to want to go deeper with it, is having those recreational experiences and realizing that, like, again, like we're humans, like we're here to have fun and like enjoy life, and not everything needs to be like have this super grand purpose to it. The purpose can just be to have fun for 12 hours.
Right. Yeah, indeed. And I think that that needs to be continuously spoken and preached. The danger, I think, is the wrong folks kind of taking that message without any of the healing. You kind of need to hear both messages.
Yes. You need both, and you can't have any one person control the narrative. That's it. There needs to be diverse voices talking about all of it. And that's always going to have to be the way that it is. And I can even not use it one way, but still respect that. I can choose to interact with it in this one way, but still respect the fact that you get to use it that way, because that's your right.
Right. Yeah, definitely, man. Well, we're coming towards the end of the hour. I want to dig in maybe to your second Aya trip, if we could, just for a few minutes. I know that you, I listened to your solo cast on it, and as I was saying in the beginning of the episode, I felt this kind of like, almost like a nausea with you, explaining some of it, and I couldn't really explain it. I think it's because I want to try, I want to try to sit with ayahuasca, or I guess you can't try once you've already taken it, right? I want to experience that and kind of come to grips with myself on some other things, that I've been working on. And I've been on a tolerance break from cannabis for a while, and I didn't really know why. And I feel like it's in some ways still growing towards that, but there's that intense fear, man. How was round 2 for you recently?
Round 2 was, it was different than round 1. So, but still like the same energy. And like, that was really my intention going into it, and try to just kind of breeze over this. I did not initially have plans of sitting with ayahuasca when I was on this trip to Costa Rica. It had been something that I had been thinking about. I hadn't made the time for. I knew all the preparation I did beforehand. I just wasn't making it a priority in my life. Once I was in Costa Rica, I was like, fuck, I really need to make this a priority. And me and my partner had a really deep discussion about it. And then the next day, the person I was staying with was like, oh, hey, we've got 2 extra spots in our Aya ceremony in 3 nights. You guys want to sit?
Manifested.
And I was like, yeah, exactly. I was like, well, that's the universe just handing this to me on a silver platter. So I can't really say no to that. And so we sat there, and like, I just really wanted to connect with that energy again, because it had been something that had really become part of my life. Like, I'm helping people access this medicine now. And I almost kind of felt like a fraud for like, I only sat with this one time a year and a half ago. Like, who the fuck am I to like guard the gate and tell people they can't come or that they can come, like, and so I just wanted to really connect with that spirit again and like help me understand. And I also just kind of questioned, like, do I really want to be doing this? Like, is this actually something that's fun? I was making 5 times as much money as I was when I was in tech sales than I am currently. So
was it as reassuring for you in hindsight as grateful?
Yeah.
Or did you make some life changes the second round?
It was definitely reassuring, but I've certainly tried to make some changes though, because there were certain ways in which I was a little bit off in my alignment and what I was doing, and so I've tried to give myself space to just kind of exist and allow some things to even like fall apart a little bit in order to make room to continue on this path and try to learn more. But there was a lot less like traumas being drudged up this time and like core beliefs about myself than the first time.
Kind of summited those, a few of them, huh?
Yeah, I would say I haven't. I get really nervous saying that because it's like, you know,
Might be surprising next one.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't want to say that I fully figured those out. Just
still a lot to work on.
Mother ayahuasca's listening.
Yeah.
for the next time. But yeah, she, you know, it was really nice. It was gentle, and I think this time I really like felt just the fucking power of ayahuasca, and like honestly like the really pleasant side of it too, like just being in community and in ceremony and going outside the Maloka and looking up at the stars and putting my hands and my feet in the grass and just like feeling like pure oneness with the whole universe and with the earth and with everybody there. And that's a very indescribable feeling.
Yeah, man, that's beautiful. That's some goodness right there.
Yeah. Well, end on that note.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Thank you so much for joining the show. Where can our listeners find out more about you and check in with TripSitting?
So on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, every podcast streaming platform, look up the TripSitting Podcast with Cam Leids. It has my name in it, so if you just type in my name, you should be able to find it too. And then on Instagram and TikTok, my handle is @_TripSitting_. And yeah, I've got a link in bio if you find me on Instagram that has any other links that you might need.
Hey, thank you, man. Looking forward to the next conversation.
Thank you so much, Rob. This has actually been like a genuine pleasure. So I appreciate you having me on, brother.
Thank you for listening to the Apartment 113 podcast. For more information about the show and our range of services, visit apt113.com. We offer cannabis software product management and agile coaching, along with writing services and weekly content. With over a decade of experience in the cannabis industry, Apartment 113 is here to help. If you want to stay connected, subscribe to the newsletter on our site and to the show on your podcast platform of choice.